QuantSpeak, expert insights from quants for quants.
Welcome to QuantSpeak, a new podcast from the CQF Institute at Fitch Learning.
Hi, I'm Dan Tudball, editor of Wilmott magazine, and this is QuantSpeak. Look back in anger. John Osborne. It's that time of year, and we're here with the perennially angry young quant, I would say, none other than Paul Wilmott. Hello, Paul.
Hello, Dan.
Welcome. We're going to round up the year. We're going to look back. But is there anything left to be angry about in quant finance, do you think?
Oh, that's quite going straight to it, aren't we? I'm very angry. Why are we recording this year sum up thing so close to Christmas? Could not we have not done it, say, in September, or ideally maybe April or something?
I know, but I always feel like it's a bit of a cheat, though. You know, everybody sums up the year at the end of November, and it's as if December doesn't exist. And then next year, when people round it up, they start from January. So it's as if anything that happens in December doesn't count.
But you know why that is, right? It's because there's this little thing called Christmas coming up.
Oh yes, I know.
This is the week where we start to panic, or at least I'm starting to panic a lot.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's look at the year for Paul Wilmott. Where's the focus been this year?
Good question.
There
are a few highlights. One was catching up with my old pal Emmanuel Derman, who, if I had to spend a while on a desert island with a quant, he would be my choice because he's very laid back and he doesn't just talk about quant finance.
That helps.
That's always good on a desert island. I'm sure he'd be very good on a desert island. I'm sure most quants I know would be a disaster. But he'd be fun and I suspect quite useful. And another highlight is I've moved into a different, not genre, but sort of books I've written before have always been for people of a university level. But I have written a couple of books this year for high school children.
Right.
One on artificial intelligence and one on finance. So it's trying to introduce things to younger people so that's been quite fun, and they're all extremely affordable, and I think if you get them now, then they will arrive in time for Christmas to fill your stockings.
What prompted you to do that?
I have a famously bad memory. I can't remember, but it's kind of been the story of my life. I can't remember most of it. I've always been like that. Nothing to do with drink or anything. It's all been bad. It's the same for my brother. He's got a terrible memory. But I tend to have an idea. And once I get an idea, I have to sort of carry through with it. It just sort of happens. I remember 20-something years ago, I was browsing the internet. I couldn't sleep at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I came across this garage somewhere in London that had this Jensen Interceptor. I knew nothing about Jensen Interceptor. Well, I saw it. Oh, that's lovely. And then the idea was in my head. So a couple of days later, I just went to the garage and just bought the blasted thing. I say blasted thing because if you've ever had a classic car, especially one built in England in the 1970s, you'll know it's not a good idea. Oh, you've been in it. So
I have.
And you remember the smell of fumes as we drove in?
I do.
So once I get an idea in my head, I just have to follow it through. So when it came to my head, I must do something for children for some reason. And so I did. And it was great fun. But also I discovered, when I was young, I used to hate I hated English and history, and I still hate history. I liked reading, but not the stuff I was forced to read. And I hated writing. So it was funny that in my 30s or so, I discovered I quite liked writing.
Right.
Similarly with lecturing, I always avoided giving any sort of lecture. And then I tried it and I thought, oh gosh, I like standing in front of people and showing off.
Ah, there it is.
Exactly. So anyway, I wrote this for high school children, the mathematics of artificial intelligence for high schoolers. And then once I'd finished that, I thought, that was fun. Let's do another subject. What else do I know about? Well, apparently I know about finance. I don't know why I did it this way around, but then I did the finance one. And I had a cunning plan, of course, because I gave that talk whenever it was in November about the cult of risk neutrality. And so
Yes.
so part of my cunning plan was if I can introduce the concept of risk neutrality in my own way to high schoolers, it might undermine all the obsessive pure mathematicians who teach it so badly. So that's a cunning plan. I don't know whether that will work. I suspect not. Yeah, so show them how it's done before they get to university even.
Well, AI, the end of 2022, ChatGPT reared its head.
Yeah.
And here you are, you've got your AI book out. And the thing that interested me about AI was the coding aspect
Right.
of an AI being able to code rather than give you a conversational answer to something that you'd really be better off perhaps finding out about yourself. But the coding part of it, and I mean, it's just been sort of at the back of my head. Should quant developers be worried about their job? Because that's the position that I think might have a bit of a problem with that.
Yeah.
You do a bit of coding from time to time if you really have to.
Not really. If I really have, not very much. I mean, I've tried learning all sorts of languages. It's a new language every couple of years, and I'd still be using Fortran if they'd let me.
Punch cards.
Punch cards. I started out with punch cards. It was brilliant. You'd do your punch cards, you'd give it off to someone, you'd wait a few days, and nothing would happen because you'd made a mistake. And you never found out what mistake you'd made. You just start all over again. That's how it should be. And the code was only about 5 lines long as well. But I can imagine, I don't know enough about it, and I don't know how good these programs are that come out at the other end. I don't know how much they need to be cleaned up, whether it's possible to put bugs in them that no one will notice, you have to assume that there'll be some malicious people out there doing naughty stuff. So yeah, there's going to be all sorts of disasters. I don't know. It's going to be like codes and code breaking, in the sense that there's the people making codes, people then trying to break codes, and then people making more complicated codes and trying to break those codes. So at some stage we'll need some mathematics. And again, I know nothing about codes and ciphers, but you'll need some mathematics to make these things robust. But there's always the human element. I mean, the whole business of how long does it take to crack a password? It can take millennia, even with the fastest computer. But if everyone goes around using the password or P4 sword, then it doesn't take very long at all. I mean, the easy way to crack things is to not pick somebody's email address and try lots of passwords. It's the opposite. It's actually to assume the password is password, or whatever the most common is, and then guess people's usernames, and that's much faster.
True.
So the human element is always going to be an issue.
Well, that human element, I mean, me not being a technical person whatsoever, I was just wondering whether, when it does come to coding and so on, whether there is any opportunity whatsoever for the human element of creativity sort of to edge out any possible AI that would be trying to crack the same task,
Right.
But I guess it depends what the initial problem is that you're tackling, rather than what you're trying to code. Would it be?
Yeah. But that does remind me that I was watching something, some BBC thing involving submarines the other day, a vigil, and so there are these images of the submarine, coming through the breaking the surface, and I'm thinking, is that real or is that AI? And I assume it's AI, because submarines have got to be quite expensive. BBC can't afford that, since they paid Gary Lineker so much money. They can't afford to rent a submarine. So it's presumably AI, and I'm thinking, oh God, that's depressing. That's depressing. Kind of spoiled things for me. So even if it wasn't AI, it still spoiled the thought of it. Because if you watch an old James Bond movie and there's a submarine, that's a real submarine, and that.
Yes, exactly.
And that the stunt people are really people doing those stunts, as opposed to.
And that Lotus Esprit is a real Lotus Esprit as well.
Oh yeah, of course it is.
The little torpedoes that come out, I'm not too sure about those though.
Okay. There is one potentially good thing, and that it will cause lawyers to be unemployed. The only problem with that, though, is lawyers will find a way around to stop it happening.
I would expect so. One sort of slightly horrific thing that I read about was researchers are actually grafting human stem cells into chips or whatever. I don't know what they do, and the thinking behind it is that organic cells use far less energy than the amount of electricity that these chips and whatnot need to do massive calculations, and they're actually doing that now.
That is disturbing, isn't it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a real neural network.
Almost every story I read about these things, I have to check the calendar to see it's not April the 1st, and it never is, or very rarely is.
Yeah, well, so that's AI done, but quantum's been an interesting one this year as a thought.
Right.
But David Orrell has been particularly forthright about it,
Yeah.
and in fact rather irritated with some of the questions that he's been getting recently as to whether it's quantum finance is too much of a stretch or not. That's going to be in the next issue of the
Yes.
magazine, actually.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts on quantum? I mean, the speed up part and all of that sort of thing, that's kind of boring, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in terms of the way of thinking about things,
I think it's fascinating. I think it is a very clever idea. I know very little about it. I've tried to understand it, but it's for some reason it's something that I struggle with. I've tried. It's on my to-do list. Maybe I should write a book on the subject for high schoolers, because when you do that, then you have to really learn a subject. That's the best way to learn a subject, is to have to teach it. But it makes so much sense, doesn't it? The fact that you don't really know what a share price is until it's observed, so to speak.
Yes.
So it does make a lot of sense. Yeah, people don't really like too many new ideas in anything really. It will take a while, or it may just die. People have tried to apply all sorts of physics ideas to finance unsuccessfully, but this one has got a certain je ne sais quoi about it.
Yes, I think you'll have to write a lecture on it or something for teenagers. Then
That might be the new year, to try and understand more about it. But the basic premise sounds very, very good.
good New Year's resolution there.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Black Scholes
Yes.
this year. We marked it in a good fashion, I would say. We had Emmanuel Derman contribute to that article, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, besides him being a nice bloke and
Yeah.
a great chap to hang out with, where's the respect for him come from with you in terms of his research and things like that? When did he sort of pop onto your radar?
Good question. I've known him since the early 90s. How did I? Oh, it goes back. I think I must have first met him when I was being wooed by Goldman Sachs in the early 90s. That's probably how I first met him. He pays attention and he's open to new ideas. I think he's one of my favorite favorite people. Really nice bloke.
Yeah, exactly. And we, celebrating that, we got to have a good panel on Fisher Black.
Yeah.
And one of the things that occurred to me was to really make an impact in quantitative finance, I think you have to have an entrepreneurial bent. There has to be an aspect of your personality, because obviously Fisher Black was the one who was sort of, not only did he work things out, but he was selling his calculations and all of that sort of thing, and getting the calculators made and all of that sort of thing. Do you think that? I mean, that's certainly an aspect that you share. I would say that entrepreneurial aspect of things. Do you think that that's an important thing to cultivate, perhaps as a quant? It's something that every quant ought to explore and think about, even if.
I really don't think you can cultivate that, though. I really don't think you can. I think you've got it as a child, or you haven't. In my case, I started. I'll call them businesses. That's a little bit generous a word.
Scams.
Scams. No, sadly, because more often than not, I lost money. So not very.
It was a quantum scam then, in that case.
Yes. No.
There was a you in an alternate
It was
alternate universe that was actually making money out of them.
that's possible. So before I became sort of a mathematician, I guess it must have been secondary school where everything became maths for me. But before that, when I was 8, 9, something like that, I did various things. I did start a school newspaper, it never came out, but I started one. We had a first issue that never appeared.
Right. Okay. Did you return the subscriptions?
Didn't get as far as that. There would have been, it would have been pennies. There was also a zoo. That was, again, it was one of those things that I had the idea, and once I had the idea, I had to follow it through. And the idea was,
what kind of zoo did you have?
well, I had these pets at the time. I had guinea pigs, cat, budgerigar, stickleback fish. There was a frog, newts, tortoise. Did I mention guinea pigs? I thought, well, what you do with animals? Well, you have a zoo, right? The local grammar school, which I eventually went to, had some mice that they were going to experiment on. And somehow, I forget how, I can't remember. I just wish I could remember all these things. People always tell me about things I've done, and I think, gosh, did I really do that? But somehow we rescued these mice from the grammar school.
Right. Okay.
I had to buy a cage for the mice. So I bought a cage for the mice. That was my, the capital outlay. So now I had to, even more animals. I went around the neighborhood sticking up signs saying this way to the zoo. And I charged a penny, an old penny.
So that's worth about, what, 40 quid now, isn't it?
Probably. Yeah. And so I went around the neighborhood with putting up notices saying this way to the zoo. My mother tells the story of how a lady and wearing a fur coat in a chauffeur-driven Rolls Royce. She exaggerates a bit, my mother, but not, maybe over the years she's added the chauffeur or something. I don't know. But anyway,
right.
So
there was a Rolls Royce.
So she knocks on the door and says, "Where's the zoo?" in a posh accent, probably. And my mother has to apologize and invites her in, as you did in those days. Complete strangers who knock on your door, come in for a cup of tea.
Wowee.
And so my mother invites her in for a cup of tea, and this fur-coated posh lady, I think the chauffeur stayed outside, as is only right and proper. And so that was my one customer. And so I made a loss on that business because the cage for the mice cost far more than the 1p I made from this one customer. The mice were later released in the local some local field,
right,
where they probably were immediately eaten by something.
That's good. Well, you contributed to the circle of life, and you learned something about risk aversion.
I did, and then I got into I started another business in my garage a couple of years later, and this was a kind of amusement arcade where I took all the various games, dartboard and throw dart, and you paid money, and if you win, you get something back. And so that was another disaster because unfortunately I misjudged the odds on something, and the local hard case, who was probably 11, he actually, unfortunately, he won one of these games, and he won, I don't know what money did we have in those days, half a crown or something.
Wow, that's big money.
It was one of those coins that don't exist anymore, pre-1971, and so I had to search to save up the half a crown.
I thought you were going to say that he gave you a good knock around because you were muscling on his turf over on the Wirral or something like that.
No. It was I just paid him off.
Again, useful lesson in life, and a good look forward to how to deal with regulators, I would say.
Yeah. Oh God! But the point is, in terms of the entrepreneurial thing, it went back to when I was 8 or 9 or so.
It's an ingrained thing.
Yeah, I just know, not always, but almost always had partners, and some cases, like my partners when we started the CQF, absolutely brilliant partners to have.
Yep.
But there've been other businesses where the people didn't really understand the whole concept of running business. I mean, the idea, for example, that all that really matters is advertising or marketing. That's the most important thing.
Yes.
More than anything.
Yes,
There you go.
exactly. We said goodbye to Harry Markowitz this year,
Yes.
portfolio
Yes.
theory. Any recollections about your first encounters with portfolio optimization and all of that sort of
Well,
thing?
well, I met him once. I organised a conference in the Royal Society on finance in the early 90s, which was
Right.
phenomenal. The number of people who turned up. He was there, Merton was there, all sorts of people who later became billionaires were there. I always wondered what Harry Markowitz did after his original work, because he did the original work. He was a student in the
Mm.
1950s. I'm not sure what he did after that, other than talk about the subject. I think it's a great concept that he came up with. And, it's one of those things that, with hindsight, oh gosh, it's so simple, so obvious.
The efficient frontier, yes.
All that stuff, yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. But obviously, the problems with it because of the parameters, the correlations, and things that are not very stable. But I haven't really followed these things. The only things I've done in that sort of field were very academic things,
Yeah.
just for the sake of publishing papers. I don't know as much as I should about that.
And we had the 20th anniversary of the CQF, which we alluded to earlier as well, which was a great success, I would say.
Yeah.
We had some good talks and a bumper issue, and the combination of the Black Scholes issue and the 20th anniversary. I think that's probably why I'm about ready to flake out now, and I probably need some stem cells grafted to whatever makes it work for me. But
do we have any anniversaries coming up, or can we take a break, or can you take a break?
I hope we don't. Well,
yeah.
actually, next year is the anniversary of Robert Merton introducing some nifty probability into the whole Black Scholes thing, and all of that. But I would have liked to marked that somehow. There are some people writing a couple of articles on that for us.
Right, but no, the CQF has been phenomenal. Oh, incredible. I mean, it's not just successful in terms of numbers of people to take it, but the approach that we took, just not being stupidly academic and telling people how finance really works and what the problems are, not pitching things as though it's all wonderful and the more detailed you get, then the better. Well, that's a load of nonsense.
Yeah, exactly.
The big picture is very important.
Well, universities are certainly, I think, going the way of the dodo, don't you think? A lot of evidence for that this year, I would say. Generally, I mean, the model, the university model, it's not necessary anymore, really, is it?
Not really. I remember when I used to go, I used to go to sit on high table
Yes.
at various positions I had at university. So I'd sit on high table with, wearing the gown, etc. And there'd be all these eminent professors. And I learned very early on that the most interesting people were not the eminent professors or that were there, or the eminent professors who were invited as guests, but the more ordinary people were far more interesting, because these eminent people, they were just so obviously just very pretentious, very full of themselves, but they also were very limited in what they would talk about. They would never open up. They were always so worried about how they were being perceived, that they were just boring.
So universities, research, and all of that sort of thing. And then we have institutions like Goldman Sachs and so on and so forth that had these amazing sort of collegiate atmospheres back in the day, which really kind of encouraged research. So through application, really novel approaches were coming about. But with the AI, with the ML, with the economic conditions as well, because people were rather shocked to experience inflation
right
end of last year, and that's sort of going away now, and it's back to interest rates going up and all of that sort of thing. But with the AI, the ML, the whole mechanistic kind of approach, do you think possibly some of the fun's gone out of it, out of the financial industry for really original thought?
Machine learning itself is fun. And I think I've said this because whenever you do a bit of machine learning, it's always something always happens. If you're doing classical mathematical modeling of pencil and paper, then you could spend weeks, months, and it's a complete dead end. Whereas you do something with artificial intelligence, you always get something happening. It may be complete rubbish. It may be complete opposite of what you expect. But it's always kind of fun, and something always happens. So that is sort of interesting. It will kill off people like me, dinosaurs, mathematical modelers. The example I always give is the Navier-Stokes equation and Euler equation for fluid mechanics, which has got just a couple of parameters in them. But if you try to do conservation, if you try to do fluid mechanics using AI, a neural network thing, then neural networks can have billions of parameters. So what is that? What is that neural network actually doing? Is it somehow concluding there's conservation of mass and conservation of momentum, or what's it doing? Or why has it got so many parameters when, where inside that black box is it doing Newtonian mechanics? There'd be no point for an Isaac Newton any longer. I think we'd just be programmers, computer scientists, which would be a shame, because mathematical modeling is a fun subject.
So we wrap it up, I think.
Yeah.
We let you get back to your Christmas panic. This should be out somewhere between Christmas and the New Year, I think.
Yeah.
So should be a good start for everybody for the new year. Thanks very much, Paul.
All right.
And we will catch up again in the new year.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to QuantSpeak. Don't forget to subscribe and do sign up to the CQF Institute for more insights into quant finance.